the U.S. House of Representatives passed a bill to expand the definition of anti-Semitism. Uh, it was a successful bill, despite the fact that there have been considerable opposing arguments that this bill infringes upon free speech. The vote went 320 to 91. It's a pretty significant vote. 320 to 91. That means it wasn't just a partisan thing. Yet Democrats and Republicans supporting this bill. And I suspect almost only Democrats opposing it, but we'll unpack that. But anyway, the House voted in favor of this new definition of anti-Semitism. The definition provided by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. Whew, this is problematic. If the bill becomes a law, campuses that would be now deemed anti-Semitic by this definition would not receive any money, any funding, any other resources from the Department of Education. The ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, argues that there are already laws prohibiting anti-Semitic discrimination and that this new definition does more and actually goes too far. Now, some of you are saying anti-Semitism is real. I agree. Anti-Semitism is growing. I agree. We must do something against anti-Semitism. I agree. So what's wrong with expanding the definition of anti-Semitism? Well, the problem with expanding the definition of anti-Semitism isn't just expanding a definition per se. It's not that. There's always new ways to think about anti-Semitism. There's new ways to think about uprooting anti-Semitism. And in a changing world, there might be new ways to be anti-Semitic that didn't fit in the old definition, and we have to expand it in order to make sure that we don't have anti-Semitism. I get it. But that's not what's happening. What they're doing is adopting the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's definition. Now, this definition is compelling to people. And on its face, it seems reasonable. Like, yeah, the Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, if anybody should know how to define anti-Semitism and fight it, it should be them. I feel you. Except the IHRA definition, first of all, was not intended to be an overarching framework for law. That wasn't, the person who created it didn't create it for that reason. But things change meaning. Things change in meaning. Things change in purpose. So that's not in and of itself disqualifying. But let's actually look at what the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism is, because that's what your congressman, y'all voted for these people. This is what they actually say anti-Semitism is. Let me pull that. Can we make that a little bigger? I'm old with little eyes. It says, contemporary examples of anti-Semitism in public life, the media, schools, the workplace, the religious sphere, could, taking into account the overall context, include but not be limited to. So this is the IHRA definition taken from the State Department's website, sort of breaking down what anti-Semitism is. Here's one of them: calling for, aiding, or justifying the killing or harming of Jews in the name of a radical ideology or an extremist view of religion. Okay. I'm not going to argue that one. I don't love the radical ideology or extremist view of religion. It seems to me you could just have it as calling for, aiding, or justifying the killing or harming of Jews, period. Because I don't care why you're calling for it. Anybody who calls for or helps to or justifies the killing of Jews because they're Jews, to me, that's anti-Semitism. I don't care what the ideology is. But if you want to say in the name of an extremist view of religion or a radical ideology, fine. I'm not arguing that at all. The second one, making mendacious, dehumanizing, demonizing, or stereotypical allegations about Jews, such as the power of Jews is collective, I'm sorry, I read that wrong. Making mendacious, dehumanizing, demonizing, or stereotypical allegations about Jews as such, or the power of Jews as collective, such as, especially but not exclusively, the myth about a world Jewish conspiracy or of Jews controlling the media, economy, government, or other societal institutions, excuse me. I'm good with that, right? Um, I have no issue with that definition of anti-Semitism. Again, if people are making stereotypical allegations, dehumanizing allegations about Jews, that, as the definition says here, as such, that's anti-Semitism. Um, all these narratives of global conspiracies, cabals of power, Jews control the world, these protocols of the elders of Zion, all these kinds of narratives, all anti-Semitism, all unacceptable. Here's where it gets more complicated as we could go down a little bit more. The third one, denying the fact, scope, mechanisms such as gas chambers or intentionality of the genocide of the Jewish people at the hands of nationalist socialist Germany and its supporters and accomplices during World War II. So basically Holocaust denial, right? Anti-Semitism. I'm with you. Accusing the Jews as a people or Israel as a state of inventing or exaggerating the Holocaust. I consider that anti-Semitism as well, 100%. No dispute from me at all. I think some people might raise a philosophical question about that. For example, if people are saying X number of people were killed and someone else says, no, it's actually Y, it's actually a little bit lower. Some people would say that's, I should have the right to do that without it being anti-Semitic as such. I understand that argument, but the problem is you're not framing it as an individual simply having a number wrong. You're saying that it's Jewish people as a group or Israel as a state inventing. First of all, if you say anybody invented the Holocaust, that's anti-Semitism, full stop. But even saying that Jews as a group exaggerate the Holocaust, that is absolutely anti-Semitic. I mean, I wouldn't debate that argument at all. There's some people who I think in good faith would dispute that, but I happen to agree that it's anti-Semitic. The next one, accusing Jewish citizens of being more loyal to Israel or the alleged priorities of Jews worldwide than to the interests of their own nations. Again, this idea of dual loyalty is a longstanding trope about Jewish people, and saying that some people are more concerned with Israel than their own country. Now, I think that becomes challenging for some people when they see people endorsing policies that are more beneficial to Israel than to the United States. But again, the undergirding here is that there's a sort of belief that there's a duplicitousness among Jewish people. That there's something shady or sneaky going on that reinforces other stereotypes about Jewish people. Again, I'm not sure that should be in a textbook definition of anti-Semitism, but I absolutely have seen and believe that the accusation of dual loyalty is weaponized as an anti-Semitic narrative or claim. I'm not sure it's anti-Semitic as such, but it's not for me to decide. I wouldn't argue with anybody about whether that's anti-Semitism or not. I just wouldn't. Here's the next one, though. Here's where it gets funky, and this is what I want y'all to pay attention to. Denying Jewish people their right to self-determination. Now, some of the other definitions are about doing something to people because they're Jewish, to Jewish people because they're Jewish. Denying a Jewish person a job is not in and of itself anti-Semitic. Denying a Jewish person a job because they're Jewish is anti-Semitic. In the same way that denying me a job because it is not problematic, but denying me a job because I'm Black is racist, right? I mean, that's just common sense. But here they're saying denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination, denying the Jewish people, right? So this is a Jewish nationalist argument, right? Saying that the Jewish people are a singular people, they are a nation, right? It's a nationalist argument. The Jewish nation or the Jewish people have a right to self-determination. Now, the problem with this is that many colonial enterprises are framed, and settler colonial enterprises are framed as the right to self-determination, when America was founded and Native Americans were killed and dispossessed of their land, many people argue that it was part of manifest destiny, right? That it was um, the divinely ordained right of white Americans to settle in all of North America, right? That it was there, and then as white men, they had a right um, to decide their own destiny, self-determination. The problem with self-determination is that we don't live in an empty world. My right to self-determination can't impinge on or infringe on your right to self-determination. So this definition doesn't take into account competing uh, agendas politically, competing political projects, competing self-determination projects, right? So if I, for example, if I say that Jewish people, or not, let me not say Jewish people, because it's not really about Jewish people, which is another sleight of hand that happens here, right? This is about Israel, right? But if you notice, they start with denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination. And then the example, the e.g. they give is saying by claiming that the existence of a state of Israel is a racist endeavor. So Jewish people is now equated with formation of a state of Israel, right? Or which is a Jewish state and a specific Jewish state, right? And so now Judaism is being conflated with Zionism, right? The project of creating a Jewish state in historic Palestine is political Zionism. So they're conflating Jewishness and Jewish self-determination with the formation of the Jewish ethno state. These two things are not the same. But again, people have a right to believe that creating Israel is okay, but I have a right, and you have a right to say, I don't believe that the formation of Israel was morally okay, politically acceptable. I can disagree with the formation of Israel, right? And I can say that creating Israel came at the expense of the Palestinian people, that the creation of a Jewish state as such affords different rights and privileges based on whether or not you're Jewish or not. And I can say that that's an ethno state. And I don't believe in ethno states. I don't believe in Kurdish ethno states. I don't believe in Arab ethno states. I don't believe in uh, Islamic ethno states. I don't believe in Jewish ethno states. I don't believe in white ethno states. I can say that unless we follow this definition, because this definition says that denying the Jewish people the right to self-determination is anti-Semitic. I don't disagree that denying Jewish people the right to self-determination because they're Jewish would be anti-Semitic, but they don't say because they're Jewish. They're just saying denying Jewish people the right to self-determination. The problem again is, I'm going to say it again, self-determination is a messy and complicated term. If I right now say that I believe as a Black Philadelphian that I have the right to also take over Delaware and New Jersey, right? And I believe that it's my God-given right, or I believe that it's my political right. And I say that as a Black Philadelphian, I want self-determination. Or I don't have to take an abstract hypothetical. You could look at the Nation of Islam. The Nation of Islam in the 1940s and 50s, they're founded in 1930, but in the 1940s and 50s, we're talking about expansion, and their vision of a nationalist project was to take over several states inside of the United States. Did they have a right to do that? They had a right to envision it. They had a right to struggle for it. They had the right to advocate for it. And other people had a right to say, no, that's not what we want, or no, that's not fair, or no, that's not okay. The Back to Africa movement, when people were going from the United States to Liberia, I'm thinking specifically of the Amerigo-Liberians. If people say, well, look, that's a colonial project for you Amerigo-Liberians to come to Liberia. And they say, well, it's our self-determination. We should be able to have those conversations. I'm not making a case for whether, at this moment, for who's wrong and who's right. I'm saying we should be able to have the conversation. But the IHRA definition says that it is anti-Semitic for me to even question the moral legitimacy of creating a state on the backs of others. If I say that the creation of the state of Israel was a racist endeavor, I'm an anti-Semite by this definition. If you say that the Balfour Declaration of 1917, which allowed for and formalized and normalized the creation of a Jewish homeland, not a Jewish state, but a Jewish homeland. If I say, yeah, but when you read that document, it barely mentions Palestinians. It doesn't mention them by name. It says it can't undermine the kind of religious and civil rights of the pre-existing population. They're talking about the Palestinians, right? But if I say, look, man, that's the Balfour Declaration. The British really screwed over the Arabs in the formation of the Jewish state. That would be anti-Semitic. If I say that the Arabs are screwed over because they were not Jewish, right? Because they were Arabs, it becomes anti-Semitic. Anyway, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but I just want you to understand that me having a criticism of the Jewish state, or of Israel more specifically, becomes anti-Semitic. If I right now were to say I don't believe in the formation of a Shiite kind of government, I don't think the government should be organized around religious identity, which is what I do believe. I have an issue with an Islamic state. If I say, look, having an Islamic state is wrong. A government cannot be governed by a Sharia law, and they cannot afford different rights and privileges, or even frame the kind of cultural or legal, rather, infrastructure around Muslimness. If I say that, people say, you might even give me some applause. You might say, yeah, that's cool. But if I say the exact same thing about Israel that I say about Iran and Saudi Arabia, it's anti-Semitic. All right, let's move to the next one. Applying double standards by requiring of it a behavior not expected or demanded of any other democratic nation. I agree. I don't think that Israel should be held to a higher standard. But Israel also shouldn't be held to a lower standard. And too often, the way this particular rule is weaponized is when we hold it becomes a space where, unless you hold every nation in the world accountable for something, you can't hold Israel accountable for it. So, for example, if we were to say, hey, we need to take Israel to the International Criminal Court, or actually, let me give you a better example. If you say we need to have a boycott, divestment, and sanction movement of Israel because of its treatment of the Palestinian people, they can say, well, you haven't boycotted Uganda. You haven't boycotted China. You haven't boycotted Russia. You haven't boycotted Uganda. You haven't boycotted Sudan. And so it becomes a way to engage in whataboutism, because any pressure, any criticism, any accountability you apply to Israel, unless you've done it to everybody in the world, you can't do it to Israel. That becomes the practical consequence of this. You might say, well, that's fair. Why should Israel get something that other people don't? And the answer is not because Israel deserves to be treated worse than other countries, but because every country doesn't have the same position in the global hierarchy. For example, Israel is a powerful nation, like the UK is a powerful nation, like France is a powerful nation, like Germany is a powerful nation, like the United States is a powerful nation. And so there's a way that I can hold Israel accountable in the international kind of political landscape that I can't hold, say, Eritrea or Djibouti. Not because those countries shouldn't be held to the same standard as Israel, but it's harder to enforce. Sometimes it's about the unique relationship. The United States funds Israel, gives Israel billions of dollars every year. So yes, the United States can apply pressure to Israel in ways that it can't apply to China. The U.S. doesn't control China. The U.S. can't dramatically impact China's political outcomes in a way that it could Israel. Because if we don't give Israel political cover at the UN Security Council, if we don't give Israel money, if we don't give Israel defense systems, if we don't give Israel offensive weapons, Israel doesn't have the capacity to do certain things. Russia still can. And Russia doesn't need us. China doesn't need us. North Korea doesn't need us. What's my point? My point is that if we call for the United States to apply diplomatic pressure to Israel and don't ask them to do that to Russia or to North Korea, it's not because it's a double standard. It's because Israel will listen. Those other people won't. So that's why you don't see a BDS movement coming from certain places and you see it from others. It's not always about isolating Israel. It's about the political realities. Using symbols and images associated with classic anti-Semitism. Absolutely, I agree 1,000%. What's the next one? Drawing comparisons of contemporary Israeli policy to that of the Nazis. That, for me, and I don't draw Nazi comparisons. I just don't like to do it. I don't like to say that this country is like Nazi Germany or these people are like the Third Reich or that person is like Hitler. I don't think they serve us well. I think they're divisive. I think they're distracting. I think they're often untrue or unfair. Hitler was a unique kind of evil that I don't think many people match up to. There's some, Pol Pot, Stalin. I can name a bunch actually, but just saying everything is like the Nazis or everybody's like Hitler, I don't think is helpful, and it's often conjures deep pain among our Jewish brothers and sisters for whom the Holocaust isn't that long ago, and still provokes feelings of pain and suffering and misery and trauma. And so I don't think we should go around using it indiscriminately or wantonly. I also don't think that it should be illegal to do it. If I want to say, hey, there are practices that the Israeli government is engaged in. Remember, it says Israeli policy. If I say this Israeli policy is similar to that of Nazi policy, that's illegal. I should get kicked out of school. I shouldn't get funding as an educational institution because I draw that comparison. I may not agree with the comparison. Again, I rarely think things are actually like Nazi Germany. That's a very rare thing. Nazi Germany was a unique kind of awful. But again, people have a right to make comparisons. And if you're saying that it is anti-Semitic, first of all, to equate a criticism of Israeli policy to a criticism of Jewish people is to conflate Zionism with Judaism. But to say that I can never compare an Israeli policy to a Nazi policy, or also I'm an anti-Semite, means then that Israel literally could create a policy tomorrow that is exactly like Nazi Germany, and we just can't say it. It's an unreasonable law or rule. And so if you can't say that Israel was racist in its founding, and you can't make contemporary comparisons or descriptions of Israel, it becomes a thing where you're being punished for criticizing Israel. It becomes a First Amendment issue. Anyway, enough with the IHRA. The point here is we don't need the IHRA definition in order to manage and respond to anti-Semitism, which is very real in this country. There are already laws on the book that prohibit anti-Semitic discrimination. Anti-Semitism needs to be addressed, but we don't want to make a definitional net. We don't want to kind of weave a definitional net that's so big and wide that everything is included. Because if everything is included, then you basically then nothing is really included, or everything is included, and therefore everybody's guilty at all times, and then we're just selectively deciding who we want to call an anti-Semite. I don't think that non-Jewish people should be just defining anti-Semitism for Jewish people any more than I think white people should be running around defining racism for Black people. But let's not pretend everybody shouldn't have a voice. If I said, something was racist and a white person didn't agree with me, I don't think because I'm Black, they have to just accept that they're racist. I do think we have to listen to each other. We have to listen to the pain and the hurt that people from these oppressed groups articulate. I think that's true. I think we absolutely have to take that seriously. We also have to have conversations. We also have to have intellectual engagement. And we have to assume that everybody's not going to land in the same place. All Black people don't see racism the same way. All Jewish people don't see the occupation or the state of Israel in the same way. We have to have those healthy conversations and dialogues, but we can't have them if Congress is passing bills that makes it illegal to even raise the question. That's deeply problematic. All right.